Greetings. This is Real Talk, History as a Weapon for Black Liberation, and I'm your host, Dr. Sundiata Keita Cha-Jua. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Hicks Tafari. She is a native New Yorker. That's the first thing she puts in her bio. She is passionate about the arts, culture, education, and translating history into practice. She earned her bachelor's degree in psychology with a minor in anthropology from Hofstra University, her master's in the arts of teaching with a certificate in elementary education from Johns Hopkins University, and a Post-Baccalaureate Certificate in women and gender studies, and her Ph.D. in educational studies with a specialization in cultural studies from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. She has taught as an elementary school teacher in Brooklyn, New York, and Baltimore, Maryland, and she was the curriculum facilitator in High Point, North Carolina. Dr. Tafari currently serves as educational consultant for Guilford County Schools and was formerly the interim coordinator of the birth through kindergarten education program, and is now the coordinator of the elementary education program in the Department of Education at Winston-Salem State University. She is also the co-founder of the Greensboro Kwanzaa Collective, which is a grassroots organization that sponsors a 7-day citywide Kwanzaa celebration. Dr. Tafari is a scholar activist, a hip-hop feminist whose research focuses on and includes Black male students and teachers, hip-hop culture's influence on identity and development, culturally relevant teaching, and critical race pedagogy, and is the visionary of a pedagogical style known as hip-hop pedagogy. Dr. Tafari.
Hey, friend.
Welcome.
Hey, Baba. How you doing?
It's a pleasure. See you again. So, on Real Talk, History as a Weapon for Black Liberation, we try to keep it informal. So it'll be sister, brother, Don, Sundiata. And I want to have more of a conversation. And having met you before, I know that should be very easy for us to do. Now, I want you to be comprehensive in your answers, but as concise as possible while being comprehensive. Okay.
I'll do my best.
I do interrupt most often for clarification so that the people who are watching us are able to pick out the nuances. But sometimes I just want to challenge, push you, right?
Okay.
So I always begin with biographical information, and I know that you use autoethnography as a methodology, so this should be very comfortable for you.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm a devotee of William Bill Cross's Negrescence theory and the cross scale of racial identity. Bill talks about the Negro to Black conversion process and the statuses through which Black people move as they come to Black consciousness. And Bill sees various ways in which one could reach that consciousness. It could be encounters, negative experiences with racism. It could be just socialization. And it could be through intellectual curiosity. But at any rate, here's the point that I want to drive for. Bill died December 6th. So I want to honor him taking a moment of silence. Okay. So, Don, can you unpack your journey? I know you're a proud New Yorker, but can you tell me what borough and how, where and when, in terms of time period, you spent your formative years? And can you discuss the most significant economic, social, political, and cultural processes or events that affected Black people during the time in which you came of age?
Sure. What a great question. Thank you. So, okay, so I was raised in the Bronx. I was born. My dad was an Air Force, in the Air Force. So I'm military parents. I'm a military baby. But so I was born at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and he was in the Air Force. But right after he was had his honorable discharge, finished his service, we moved to the Bronx. And so I was raised in the Bronx. I lived in the Bronx. I believe I was 3 when we moved to the Bronx, which would put us in 1977. And so I was raised in the Bronx. I went to high school in the Bronx, went to college out in Long Island, New York. And I think that when I think of, it's hard for me. And you mentioned I always say I was born in 1974. I was raised in the Bronx. Me and hip hop are here. Like it's me,
Yeah.
hip hop and I are one. Every important thing I can think about in my life has a hip hop soundtrack to it. You know, I could think about what song was playing. And I think it's so much about that, but I feel like hip hop is such a significant driving force in the life of Black people, especially Black people from my generation, hip hop generation, Gen Xers, those of us born during that time period. And so I think that hip hop is probably one of the things, the advent and the elevation and the evolution of hip hop would be significant when I think of Black folk, especially African Americans living in the US over the past 50 years. I know it absolutely impacted me.
So let me push you to go a little bit deeper in terms of your lived experiences. And I know hip hop plays a dominant role, but in your coming to Black consciousness, right, and becoming a scholar activist, what were some of the critical incidents that pushed you along your journey? Beyond hip hop, right? You also you're a reader. So were there seminal texts, critical personal influences, mentors? Can you talk about those kinds of things and then weave it in?
Absolutely. And so life-changing, a couple of important points for me. One of those is in 1989, and I'll never remember, 85.
85.
I was 11, and my sister took me to the store. I had saved up $3, and we went to the record store, right? We went to, you know what I'm talking about. But the young folks don't know nothing about a record store, but we went to the record
store. Back
in
the day now.
And I bought, and so, and I'm going to point out a couple of things. This is the first one. Salt and Pepper, at the time they were called Supernature. They had a record called The Showstopper.
Yeah.
And in The Showstopper, so now, mind you, hip hop is, mostly male. There's some women involved in this time, but here is the first girl group to be signed to a major record label, hip hop. And on this record, there's a line in there, and it says, "Hey yo, San, come on." Then she says, "But Douglas and Richard won't like it. So come on, then let's stop the show." Right? This line where they not just say, "Look, we're gonna do what we want," but they kind of call these dudes out their name, right? And in the hip hop generation, if I tell you my name is Slick Rick and you call me Richard, you call me by my government name, like that's a diss, right? That's a diss. So they say, but Douglas and Richard won't like it. And they talk about Dougie Rich and Slick Rick. So come on then, let's stop the show, because they had a song called The Show. And to me, it was an awakening. It was like, wait a minute, we could do that? Like, girls can talk back to boys? Like, this was the first time in my life that I realized that my voice had power, that Black women had a right to it, and that I belonged in that group. Like, I was one of them. I saw myself in Salt and Pepper. And so this is my first awakening, right? In 1985, I'm like, okay, it's literally changing me and opening my eyes. And then in 1989, Queen Latifah released Ladies First.
Right.
Oh, snap, right? So again, here is this look at Black women in this male-dominated field saying, you thought the ladies couldn't make it? You must be wrong, right? Like this intense, very intentional attack on patriarchy and sexism in a real way. And then and so at this point, I'm inspired, not just in my eyes open and I'm aware and I'm ready to take on the world, but I'm like, I'm going to do hip hop, right? This is what I think is going to be my life's work, hip hop. I'm going to be a rapper. So I'm on the train one day, I'm hanging, my friends, and we talking, I'm hanging from the strap, right? And I'm rapping for my friends because I was a sick lyricist, I'm telling you. Okay. I'm rapping for my friends. And as I'm rapping, there's this lady watching, and New Yorkers watch, so it was no big deal. But I noticed her watching, and then I noticed her get up as it neared the Gun Hill Road stop on the 5 in the Bronx. And then just before the train stopped, she looked at me. I had taken a pause, and she says, "Have you ever heard of Bell Hooks?" And I said, "No, it's 1992. I said, "No, I'm 18. And she goes, "She has a book called Sisters of the Yam. You should read it." I'm like, okay, right? So the lady gets off the train. I don't know this woman, never seen her before in my life.
Well, let me ask, why do you think she, based on you rapping, she decided to suggest you go read Bell Hooks?
Because she knew that book was going to change my life for real. That is the book. So I was raised in a home where you respected your elders. Now I'm from Eden Wall Project in the Bronx. So we don't take no mess, but we also don't play with our elders, right? That's a serious, you don't mess with that. So this woman, who was probably, in retrospect, she was probably 30, right? But then she was old, right? When you're 18, 30, when you're 18, 30 is old.
Yeah.
So, she gets off. So I listened. My elder told me to read a book. So I go to the bookstore, because we didn't have Amazon back then. I went to the bookstore. I found the book. It was only a couple of dollars, $10 or so, I guess. And I read the book. This is my first time reading what I now know to be an academic text, right? And it was totally readable for me, an 18-year-old. And I had this language now around patriarchy and sexism and neoliberal capitalism. And I'm sitting here like, oh, snap. That's what Salt and Pepper was talking about. Like, Bell, I started to, that's what Queen Latifah was talking about. These are words. So now I felt like I had this expanded vocabulary. I had this new language, a new set of glasses at which I could look at the world and explore it. And now, and I had just started college. And so now I'm like, word. I am excited because now, again, I have this new door and I'm like, Bell Hooks. I got to read everything by Bell Hooks. Who's this Bell Hooks person? She's a college professor. I love it. And so now I go on and I'm studying psychology in college and I'm learning more about people. I'm minor in anthropology. I'm learning more about it. And that is the book that literally changed my life. And even once I started my doctoral program years and years later, I always knew I wanted to write like Bell Hooks because she wrote to an 18-year-old.
Right.
Didn't have a big background, big vocabulary, but I understood every word. And I knew that I wanted to write like her. I knew that I wanted to write in a style that was readable to everyday people, that didn't necessarily have a long line of citations and all these big heteronormative hegemony, all these all these big words, right? I
Right.
wanted to write
The words would be what they meant.
right,
So
right.
now, were you taking Black Studies classes at that time, or did that lead you into Black Studies?
It led me into it. I wasn't taking any classes, and I'm pretty sure my freshman year I was taking the basic gen biology, chemistry, that kind of stuff. I was taking psychology, and again, in retrospect, I had some pretty radical professors, who I now know, and I didn't really even have the understanding at the time, but I now know they were pretty radical, Black professors.
Right.
And who poured into us, those Black students. I went to a PWI, and so they really did. Say that again.
Amongst those professors, who stands out?
Well, goodness gracious, Michael Barnes was one of my professors, and oh my goodness, I cannot believe I can't remember her last name. I'm seeing it, and it was a unique last name. It's a Black woman who I had was a professor.
For you later.
Yeah, it'll come to me later. But those two in particular were the ones who were really impactful in my experience at Hofstra, undergraduate. And so when I think about, like I said, Bell Hooks' words, and then when I was in my doctoral program, I was assigned to read a piece by Patricia Hill Collins. And Patricia Hill Collins, and this article was talking about Sojourner Truth and her insider without this kind of how Sojourner Truth was able to work the system and navigate these different spaces, be around white women and be around Black women, and be able to be herself in these spaces, but to also effect change and make space within these spaces. And so I was impressed by that toward an epistemology of empowerment. That's what a piece was called about, Sojourner Truth. And then there was a piece where she talked about her Afrocentric feminist epistemology. And that was another thing that I think that when I think about being a scholar activist, I think that is the piece that kind of helped me see that I could take all of this stuff, all of this passion, all of this stuff I'm learning in the academy, and I can make it real for people, right? That these things would fuel the work that I'm doing in the community, and the work that I'm doing in the community needed to drive, influence the work that I was doing in the academy, that there's no separation of the two, that the two need to go hand in hand. And that's what I think of and how I see myself as a scholar activist, that was really important, that we need each other because we are the same, right? We get lost, we get all and get these doctors and these certifications and degrees, and we think we different and we think we better, right? And it's like, you can be different. But different doesn't necessarily mean better.
Differently, but we're not. Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned Latifah and Salt and Pepper, but you're coming of age at that point in which gangster rap is promoted. So can you talk about any other artists that influenced you and how you saw the introduction of gangster rap into the hip hop genre?
So I think, and I can only speak from personal experience, that Gen Xers like me have a very different perspective of gangster rap. Like we see, and is it okay for me to cuss? We see F the police, right? F the police. And some people see gangster rap and we see resistance, right? Like we're just saying what's on our mind, right? Chuck D said, hip hop is the CNN of the ghetto.
Right.
And so we were here. Our parents told us the promise of an integrated school system, right? Of the work that they did. They walked with Malcolm. They walked with Martin. They fought side by side with Malcolm and got the schools desegregated. And I did this, and we watched Eyes on the Prize in school, right? So you got to remember, this is a generation where we were the first to go through all integrated, let me say, desegregated schools, right? Desegregated schools.
Yeah, desegregated.
So when I see KRS-One and NWA, I don't see
you don't see a difference.
Gangster rap. I see we're here to make some noise and push back against the resistance. We're here to fight back against police brutality, which Marvin Gaye said. Marvin Gaye is the first gangster rapper, if you ask me.
We're go back to now.
And the Lost Poets. That's the Last Poets, right? That's what we talking about. What they say, you know, we scared of folks afraid of a revolution, right? The revolution will not be penalized. Yeah, that's all I feel. What I feel hip hop did in that generation was like, look, I'm tired of taking the mess. I'm tired of laying it down and putting up with and waiting for the day to overcome. And I'm taking it.
You didn't see much of a distinction in the early days between what would become so-called gangster rap and conscious rap. So did you ever get into the coup, for instance, Boots Riley and the coup out of Oakland?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't.
Yeah, that was a bit more class conscious rap. Yeah, very Marxist influence. So let me shift and talk about your elementary school teaching career and your career in facilitating curriculum. So just tell me about how did that experience impact what you do as a university professor?
Well,
research agenda, but also pedagogy.
Well, I mean, like I said, I majored in psychology, and I knew I wanted to help people. And I said, how can I help people? What's the best way to serve? And then I thought, well, maybe I'll be a teacher. And I went and became a teacher. And that's where I was able to see what is really going on in schools, right? I mean, we think about the job that teachers have, and it's to prepare humans to go out and be what we call productive members of society, right? Contributing citizens. And that's such incredible work. Because when we look at, I'm going to be a neuroscientist. Neuroscientists have to pass the 3rd grade, right? They got to graduate from high school. And so we underestimate the role of K-12 teachers. And I see how important that is, pre-K 12 teachers, and how important, what a strong foundation we're laying for society. And so as I continued to do my work, I realized that I was a pretty good teacher. I was really good in elementary school, and I was mentoring another teacher. And then I thought about, I said, I wonder what way can I most impact children? And so by doing that, by thinking I wanted to be able to impact children at the widest way that I can, is what made me move into higher ed.
But let me roll you back. What made you a really good elementary school teacher? What did you do?
I cared.
Different.
So it's two things. I cared, right? So I always say children don't care what you know till they know that you care. And I cared. Like, I love children. I want them to learn. I want them to learn because I'm a Kwanzaa girl, right? I got my Kwanzaa shirt on, right? So the Nguzo Saba, I think about Ujima, collective work and responsibility. What good is knowledge if I can't share it? What good is it? Like, it does absolutely no good for me to just sit around being brilliant. Like, the only benefit to my knowledge is in the cycle, in the flow of it, me sharing it with others and me getting knowledge from that's where it is. So I feel like that's what I enjoyed happening. And that's what made me a good teacher, is because I loved that idea of helping children explore the world, giving them the tools to explore the world and learn and facilitate their curiosity, right? To help them learn new things. And so, and that's what made me a good teacher. And I understood the value of experiential learning. I understood, and I still
Break
understand
that down.
that
Experiential learning.
experiential learning is making learning an actual enterprise, right? Like it's saying, okay, so we're learning about chemistry. We're learning about weather and barometers and the types of clouds. Let's go take a trip to a weather station. And in the weather station, we're going to get to meet a real life meteorologist who's going to explain to us how he predicts the weather, right? Or how she predicts the weather. We're going to get to walk through the set and have some fun pretending that we're meteorologists, right? So that's a basic example of experiential learning. So we're taking what we're doing in the class, what's in the curriculum, and we're making it real for the children. We're showing them, how does this show up in real life? Why does this matter? Right? Why do we need to learn this? Well, this is how it is applied in the working world. This is how you can see what you're learning in the third grade, how that translates to your grandmother's TV. Right? Like, so that's experiential, helping them to see, and then providing children with these fun learning opportunities to be in the world and to learn. And again, to make those connections to what it is they're learning in class. And I was infamous in my school. I took my children on field trips every single month.
Good.
Every single month, because I said, we're not about to sit in this building for 180 days with me talking to them. And like there's a whole world out there for us to explore. That's where learning happens. And so that's how I see experiential learning. It's using the world as your classroom.
Good. Yeah, impressive. And I'm going to assume that you're still taking those attributes and approaches to learning into the university setting.
Absolutely. One of the courses I teach is called Advancing. So I teach two courses, kind of counterpart courses. In the fall, I teach Advancing the Academic Success of Black Boys. And in the spring, I teach Advancing the Academic and Social Success of Black Girls. And in both of those classes, my thing was, I taught the class the first semester, and I said, we're not going to sit here and talk about Black children. We're not just going to do it. We're going to go out and we're going to actually interact with Black children. And so I developed a partnership with the local public school system. And we have a particular school that we go to where my 30 university students are matched with 4th and 5th grade children at this elementary school. And once a week we go, and my students are mentors, and the children get they're mentees, and they're matched up, and we visit them once a week for the whole semester. We bring the drum line to the school. You know, HBCU drum line is, they make movies about us, right? They make movies about us. You know, we bring the drum line, we bring the cheerleaders, and then the children get to come to visit our campus and get to meet students. They hung out with the alphas, and you know, they'll hang out with different Greeks and again, the athletes. It is big fun, but that mentoring, that connecting throughout the semester is super important, so that my students who are learning on how to advance the academic success of Black boys get to actually see what happens again outside of the curriculum, right? That much of a child's success is not just about can they read and write. It's about how they can interact with human beings. It's how they navigate and how they regulate their emotions. And those are the types of things. Social-emotional piece. The social-emotional piece is the piece that our mentoring programs. Like, I'm not doing another tutoring program. There's plenty of tutoring programs that I'm grateful for them, but that's not what we needed to do. We just want to sit and talk to children, right? We want to be significant adults in their lives. We want to give them a space. And my thing is just through that coursework, we're going to do that. And so I love it because we're reading the text, we're reading Kunjufu, right? We're reading Tyrone Howard in the Black males class. And it's really great work. Chris Emden, right? And it's really great work. And we have a great time. And we are unpacking hip hop. We're looking at lyrics. So we use hip hop as text as well. And we're looking at what these people are telling us about the Black male experience. They're interacting with children, and then they're able to bring that together.
In terms of the two classes, the one focused on males, the other one focused on women, what's the gender ratio in each class?
So what is kind of sad to me, not kind of sad, it's very sad to me, is that the Black males class in the fall is typically about 60% women and 40% men.
60%?
Right? About 60% women and about 40% men, give or take 10%. Usually it's never more men than women. It's typically maybe 70% or 80% women, but it's typically almost balanced, right? But with more women than men. The Black girls class in the spring is almost all women. I had last semester when I taught the class, there's 38, 28 women, 2 men in the class.
What do you attribute this to? I mean, is it because of one, colleges and universities are probably 66% Black women and a third Black men on average, and HBCUs being maybe some 10 to 1? And is it also just the fact that are a lot of the people who take those two classes going to become public school educators?
No. So both of the classes are what we call general education courses, which means you students can take them. They're 2,000 level courses. Students can take them in their freshman year at any time, and they meet university SLO, student learning outcomes. So one is a critical thinking class and the other is oral communication. So if you need that competency, you can take the class. So I have all majors. That's the beautiful thing about it. It's not just, it is required for education majors, but I also have mass comm majors and biology majors and nursing majors and sports management majors and all kinds of majors in that class.
So why so few Black males?
Patriarchy. I'm going to say that. And then I'm going to lean back. Okay. So what I find is when I ask the first day, I asked them, why are you taking this class? And they all say, the women in the Black males class will say, I'm interested in improving my relationships with Black males. I'm going to be a teacher, or I'm going to be a nurse, or I'm going to be whatever. And I want to make sure that I'm able to work well with Black boys. You know, they have brothers, they have a father, they have relationships with, with Black boys and or men, and they want to be able to increase those. They want to learn more about them. The brothers say similar things. They thought it was an interesting class, so they decided to join it. That is the word. Black women are interested in improving their relationships with Black men. It doesn't happen the other way around. Not in my experience. I've been teaching both classes. I started teaching the Black males class in 2014. I started teaching the Black girls class in 2016. The Black males class.
You got nearly a decade of experience.
And so every semester, what I find is, and it's a lot like racism, right? So when we think about race in this country, Black folk are taught, right? W.B. Du Bois talked about double consciousness, right? We're taught that we are the other and we are existing in this white world. And in order for us to be successful, we need to learn about the white world so that we know how to navigate it, right? We got to understand their rules, the culture of power. Culture of power is whiteness, right? Oftentimes. It's the same thing how patriarchy works. Women and girls are taught, you need to understand how men think. You need to understand what boys are doing so that you can navigate in this men's world. Men don't think like that about women. They just don't. It's not necessary, because women are expected to conform. We're expected to make men comfortable. We're right. We think about dress codes. Girls have dress codes in school because we don't want to be distracting to boys. How about you mind your business? Why do I have to dress us? Why do I have to cover up so that you're not distracted? How about you mind your business? You keep your paper on your work instead of
learn to focus.
My t-shirt strap. Like what?
Yeah.
So that's what I see.
But
there are plenty of men. We have plenty of men at my university. They are on the football team. They are on the basketball team. They are in the meetings they want to be in. We have members of 5 different fraternities. Matter of fact, 6 different fraternities. There are plenty of men. It's not because they aren't in college. They're actually more research. Yeah. Right. They're actually more men in college than in jail. They are here. They're just not interested because society, and I don't blame them in particular. Society is not set up that way. Society says, men, white folk don't need to learn about black folk, and men don't need to learn about women.
But I mean, if we're looking at the economic and educational structures, and even in terms of political representation, at least for black folk, that notion is rapidly dissipating as women are emerging because of higher education. Women are emerging into power positions, and certainly the black community has always functioned on the basis of women being the people who did stuff. You know, they didn't talk, but they got stuff done, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, sad.
Mm-hmm. And they still found a way to make Kamala look bad, right?
Yeah.
Look what they did to Michelle Obama. Look what they did to Kamala. You know, I mean, Michelle Obama's most educated first lady in history. But so it seems that, it's just the patriarchy is real. The patriarchy is real.
Educated vice president, more experience, all of that. Yeah, it's a piece for another show. Absolutely. Because I want to stay on this.
Yes,
I'm not running from it. I appreciate it. Give me love.
Let's hit my teeth.
We could go down this rabbit hole. And I think some of these things will come back up. But there's a piece you wrote entitled Teaching Social Justice Ain't Easy. Stories of HBCU faculty who walk the talk. Mm-hmm. And so it's autoethnography of 3 faculty. I want to focus on you. So can you talk to me about hip-hop pedagogy?
Hip-hop pedagogy.
Yeah. How does it operate as a theory of teaching? What are some classroom strategies that flow from it? How and why do you see social justice as integral to hip-hop pedagogy? And just, talk about how you've implemented that in elementary, pre-K, secondary, and at the collegiate levels.
Okay.
In other words, take the question and do what you will with it.
All right. And so when I think about, again, at hip hop to me is a site of resistance. When I have this is my lens. It's who I am, right? So it's the way I see the world through these eyes of self-destruction. We're headed for self-destruction. Ladies first, right? These are the things that are in my head as I'm working with children. You must learn, right? That we're working with children. And so to me, it's constantly, that's the thing, for me, when I think of hip hop as a pedagogy and hip hop pedagogy, it is about making the world your classroom, right? Making the world your classroom. This is that learning happens outside of the context of these 4 walls, that education is a lifelong experience. That's really at the root of it. And that we can learn anywhere. We can learn outside the classroom, and that the world is also our text, right? The world is our classroom and the world is our text. So I can't just be wedded to the books of people with Ph.D s or people who are, right? I need to also be listening to what J. Cole is saying. I need to also be listening to what, I don't know, Remy Ma is saying. I need to also be listening to what, of course, the KRS-Ones are saying and the Common is saying, but I need to be listening to what Megan Thee Stallion is saying about the world right now. And how do I unpack that, the message that's in the music, and how do I use that to help me understand other themes, right? In literature, they talk about universal themes. There are these universal things that are displayed and discussed in the music. We had a brilliant conversation. We were listening to Thieves in the Night by Black Star.
Okay.
Right? Talib Kweli and Mos Def, Yasin Bey. And there's a part in there, they say something about Marcus Garvey. And I actually had students who did not know who that was.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
I was floored.
You talking?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
Are you talking like last year, this year?
Yeah, the last few years. It might have been 5 years ago. It might have been right pre-COVID. I had a student say, "Well, so who was he talking about?" That's what he said. They didn't understand what Black Star was, the Black Star Line. Take the Black Star Line right on home. They didn't understand that whole Back to Africa. They had never heard of it. The whole Back to Africa movement and Marcus Garvey. And so we have this great conversation about who Marcus Garvey is, right? Using hip hop. There's a song, one of my favorite songs, Grills by Nelly, right? And so there's this whole thing. And Paul Wall has a verse where he says, he talks about his grills are all diamonds. And he says, I could cause a cold front if I take a deep breath. What a great foundation for a lesson on weather with children, right? So these things that we're hearing in our music, let's make sense of that. Let's unpack it, right? J. Cole has a song, Wet Dreams. And in the song, it starts off, I was in my math class. And he goes on and telling this story about how he likes this girl and we ain't never did this before. And it's about taking off the mask. It's about the mask we wear. So there's so many great conversations that we can have that I could read a book from a brilliant published scholar about, or I could have this conversation and say, what has happened? Where is this whole thing taking place? So for my education majors, here's this whole song, and students, everybody loves the song, and I never did this before now, and I ain't never, and they singing the song, and I said, where'd the song take place?
They're analyzing it, yeah.
Where's the song take place? Song takes place in a math class. So you talking about being a teacher, you got to be honest and be aware of what other things might be on teach students' mind. So when I'm talking about culturally relevant teaching with students, helping them to understand how to navigate the different nuances of the teenage experience. Stop acting like you were not 16 at some point in your life and walking around horny and silly. Like, stop. Like J. Cole just reminded you what you were thinking about when you were in math class, right?
Hey.
And so there's so many great jumping points and lessons that I find in music that we unpack. Megan Thee Stallion has a song called Anxiety that's all talking about the struggles of mental health and the pressures that she's under in society. Brilliant song. She also has this great editorial conversation with her and Maxine Waters. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So there's so many things that when we think about hip hop as a culture, that it's everywhere. And then if we engage with it in a way, and when I talk about hip hop pedagogy, I'm not talking about playing some music to get kids to calm down. I'm talking about digging and unpacking, again, using hip hop as text, looking at the artists and looking at what they're doing outside of their entertainment, right? How are they changing the world? Cardi B's work with the election, the past election, right? Different people are doing really great things. Artists are doing really great things. And again, digging deep and having those conversations. And then it's about, so we have the world as your classroom, the world as your text, but then there's also this ethic of care and compassion Like if I'm about resistance, if I love this music that I tell you changed my life because it showed me how it gave me a voice and it showed me that I had the power to change the world through my gifts, right? Kuumba, through my gifts, then I need to make sure that I'm empowered, that I'm giving that same message to my students. It's all about helping them to see you have the power. My college students are floored when I tell them most revolutions are led by young people. Yeah. I said, you think those people walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge were old? Martin Luther King wasn't even old. What was he, 39 when he was assassinated?
Yeah,
he wasn't even 40. Yeah. Right? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he was not even 40. And so when I think about, so I'm constantly telling and helping them to see that the world has so much to offer, and that they have to pull that fire, and that us elders are the liaisons for them. We know the ropes. So yes, I said, you know what the teachers were doing that day they walked across that bridge? They were making sandwiches. They got the permits so that, you know, they made sure they were ready. You know, some of them walked for sure, but they also did all that peripheral work to make sure that the young people had the space. And I just feel like a lot of those lessons that young people have to know, that we care about them. We've taken our hands and thrown them in the air, and then they wonder why the world has gone mad. Because we too busy scared of young people. Why are we scared of these babies? These are babies. They didn't fall out the sky. And the more we take our hands off, the wilder the world is going to get, because we taking our hands off. We handing them the phone. Here, look at my phone. We don't talk to them anymore. We don't play with them. You know what I mean? And so it's about being engaged and having real honest conversation. At the beginning of each of my weeks in my class, I play a song. They get a copy. I give them a copy of the lyrics. They annotate, and I tell them which lyrics stand out to you and why. What is this artist trying to teach us about Black masculinity or Black femininity or the Black male experience? And then what are we going to do about it? Right? What are our next steps? Right. It's never just what did we learn? It's about, okay, what did we learn and what we're going to do about it?
There you go.
Helping them see that there's action in here, right? It's not enough. Remember I said, Ujima, it's not enough to just sit here and know stuff. What you going to do about it now that you know it? Let's do something. And so that what I feel is when I think about hip hop pedagogy, some of those things. And there's some brilliant writers who talk about hip hop pedagogy, I'm sure in a lot more detail than I, but that's my take on it, especially when I think about hip hop feminist pedagogy as well.
No. That's impressive. And that's one of the reasons why I'm having you on the show, is that I find your idea is very attractive in that sense. You know, I work with a different type of pedagogy, but we have some similar practices. I start every class with a song, but I tie it to the historical era, a song or a poem, but do much of the same thing. But so I want to move a little bit more toward some of your I want to raise some questions about pre-K. And, you know, I think you said for 6 years you were the interim coordinator of the birth through kindergarten education program. So now, first tell us what that was, and then I want you to talk about the importance of universal pre-K. And I read a study, and it was pointing out very clearly, I think this from 2017 in the Journal of Applied Developmental Psychology, and it's pointing out that for working class Black children, those who went through a pre-K educational program, that it advanced them 4 months, right? And I had an experience with a member of the Champaign, City of Champaign School Board. And it was a candidates discussion. this guy was on the school board, right? And I
Mhm.
asked him a question, and his response was that if a kid couldn't read entering kindergarten and couldn't do basic math, there was nothing that they could do for such a child. And I was outraged, right? Like,
Yeah.
why the hell we got teachers?
Right.
What
Rightfully
the hell
so.
are y'all for? Right?
Hmm.
But that was the perspective, and I suspect that this is the perspective of many a white school board member, many a white superintendent, and UGOBs, right? 411, as they say, white teachers, and a few black ones. So can you talk about the importance of pre-K, but also that this is utter insanity what they're arguing?
It's quite insane to say at kindergarten they don't know how to read.
Who's in the door?
Then why are we doing anything? Right? What's the purpose of schools? I mean that's ridiculous. So I would say, okay, so universal birth to kindergarten education is what I did. Was I was the program coordinator at the university for people who want to teach children ages 0 through 8, right? Infants, there is infant education, infants, toddlers, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, which is we call pre-K, and kindergarten, first, second grade is actually part of that. It's early childhood or birth through kindergarten, two different terms, but similar. And so I helped to train those teachers, right? Take those young people who were interested in working with young children and help to train them. I also served on several committees and councils and the pre-K in Forsyth County, pre-K priority in Forsyth County. Universal pre-K it's just really, it's like a non-negotiable, like it's just a given. It makes sense that we want to level the playing field. And that's what, I said it before, right? We talk about racism. There are certain things in place, and I'll go back, imperialism. There are certain things in place in order to perpetuate it. And so that's why universal pre-K is not a thing, because they know. I mean, we look back historically in this country. Enslaved Africans, it was illegal for them to read. Why? Because they knew knowledge was power. So why not give Black and brown children access to education earlier in their lives, as soon as they are in a critical, sensitive period and they're ready developmentally?
Mm-hmm.
It's for obvious. It continues to perpetuate the ideology that Black folk are less than, that Black folk are dumb. Why would we provide them? Why would we level the playing field for our worst enemy? They don't want that. They don't want that. They don't want little Black and brown babies reading at 5.
So this ain't
changing the world.
The U.S. empire is not going to provide universal pre-K. A quick story. In the late 20s or the early 30s, Ida B. Wells convinced Reverend Reverdy Ransom of St. Paul's AME to introduce the first Black kindergarten. And the point that I'm driving at is that when we have had success, we've done it through freedom schools. We've done it through what used to be the Council of Independent Black Institutions and the Liberation Schools, the Panthers, the Breakfast Program. That we've taken that on, the education of our children. And it seems to me that if we're going to survive and ultimately defeat this beast, we're going to have to take that responsibility and build educational institutions that function from, what did you say, 0
to 8.
0 to the HBCU.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's no other option for us, but to do it ourselves.
Absolutely. 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 We keep trying to make space for us within this institution. I was on a panel last year. It might have been earlier this year, and they said, what, talked about the status of schools, and they said, well, how do you fix schools? Like, what would you do? What would you recommend? And I said, you need to tear them down and start from scratch. Because this school system that we have was never designed for us. Right. It was designed for white boys. Wait. White affluent boys.
White affluent boys, but it was structured around agriculture. Right.
That's why kids don't go to school in the summer. Right. Because they're supposed to be on the farm. Right. They're supposed to be working like people. It's not because they had passion and said, oh, kids need a summer break, go to Disney World. No, it was like they're out of school because it's farming season. Right. Get to work. Get to work. So schools were never designed for us. The whole structure, when you look at Prince Ea has this poem, I just sued the school system. It's brilliant. And there's a part in it where he says, take a look at a phone from 150 years ago. Doesn't look like this, does it? Doesn't look like this at all, right? So totally this, that big old thing. Take a look at a car from 150 years ago. Think about how cars have changed. And then he showed a picture of a classroom from 150 years ago. Looks almost exactly the same.
They look exactly the same.
School children are sorted. Is a factory model. School systems are set up in this factory model where children are sorted by date of manufacture, not by who they are or what their capabilities are or what their interests are. You think you would take a kindergarten, what we call a kinder who can read and a kinder who cannot read, and put them in the same class? Why wouldn't they be in different classes? Why wouldn't you take a kinder who says, I want to be an astronaut, and a kinder who says, I want to be a veterinarian, and put them in different tracks and allow them to start interacting with the world and experiencing, getting little peeks into building the skills that they will need to expand these gifts and interests they have. But no, we don't do that. We shove them in a classroom. You 5, go over there. You 1, you go over there. You 6, you go over there. And we force them with this stale general curriculum that doesn't include everybody. That's incredibly horribly whitewashed. If the curriculum's not designed for us either. And then we're mad and then we say, oh, they're not doing well. Who does well with something when you're totally bored by it? Who does well when you're sitting? And now I shudder to think of what is going to happen as we continue these attacks on Black history and African-American studies in schools. Is that enough? Indentured flavors.
And where we are, because these MAGA fascists are intent. You anticipated my next question. They are absolutely intent on slashing the budget, pushing, gutting education, curtailing the teaching of Black history. Like I don't think that they want to eliminate it. I think they want to pervert it. And I think the goal is to turn Black history and Black culture into patriotic, what they call patriotism, and entrepreneurism, right? Mm-hmm. They're opposed to the collectivism that has been historic in our communities. They want to commit us to the preservation of the U.S. empire and world capitalism. That's what they want to do. And Black history is a threat to that shit, right? Because we've always had to oppose that. So you got a fight back strategy? How are we going to?
My response is tear them down and start over. Like maybe we need to. We keep trying to make this thing work, and it's not working. No matter how many new laws, race to the top, no child left behind, all the little new, tear it down, burn it to the ground, tear it down and start from scratch. Y'all want to keep that over there? You keep your kids over here. We building new schools over here that teach in a very African way, right? That teach our children, and that we think about. We have freedom schools, right? Why aren't all schools like freedom schools? We know the things that work. We know what works in education. We know what works, but there's still this refusal to do it. We know exactly how to teach reading. We know exactly teachers. We know exactly how to teach reading. However, the resources still magically are never available to make sure that we have those tools. The teachers who are doing their best are swept off and lured into already high performing schools, very white schools, right? Don't send your best teachers. Wouldn't it make sense to send your best teachers into low performing schools? That's not how it happens.
That seems the most logical thing to do.
That's not how it happens. Because they knew if they sent their best teachers into low performing schools, then those schools would no longer be low performing. If you push resources into low performing schools, and if you impact and build up the communities around those schools. I always say you don't fix schools by fixing schools. You fix schools by fixing communities. So I don't care how incredible this school is. If it's in the middle of a war zone.
Right.
So children get this great little sanitized experience for 6 hours, and then they got to walk out through gang fire or step over crackheads or walk by liquor stores or come on. So why not provide adequate health care? Too much why not provide employment opportunities so that families aren't underemployed and experiencing unemployment? That's too much right. We've had a war when the drug of choice was crack and it was affecting Black communities. There was a war on drugs, put them all in jail. But now that the drug of choice is fentanyl and it's impacting white communities, we have an opioid crisis.
That's right.
What?
It becomes a health crisis. No, it becomes a health crisis.
That's what I'm saying. It's so much bigger than schools.
Yeah.
It's so much bigger than schools. And so we got to we have to be intentional about our approach and make sure that we are providing and building schools that meet the needs of Black and brown children, and be okay with. And I don't have a problem. There's some people who point the finger and say we should have never desegregated. I don't believe that because there was no way for our people to know what was coming. I try not to point, but I don't blame my ancestors, right? They did, I believe they did the best they could so that I could breathe, right? Not just survive, but breathe.
And I would say that was mixed, in that while it does in fact lean toward the negative, it was mixed, right? There were some positives,
right?
But yeah, absolutely. But
it's right. And so imagine if we had a plethora of school, and I'm not talking about a charter system that pulls away from public schools. Yeah. I'm saying stop all of it and say, okay, if we're going to do this funding system, right, let's make sure that we build different types of schools and provide access for everyone, regardless of your racial background, regardless of your economic classification. Imagine that. Imagine actually leveling the playing field for real. And provide it. And if you say, okay, we have the school, we want to have it based on African principles, beautiful. We're going to be over here. We're going to have this particular institution that has this different model. And you want to have your Catholic school over here that's very structured, and go ahead, have that. But then don't try to make sure that we all have this same standard or make sure everybody's at the table. Like there's so many other ways to do it, but it's just much too narrow and whitewashed right now for it to work. I really feel like it's a starting from scratch. It's a starting from scratch because to be honest, I like to say schools are doing exactly what they were designed to do.
Yeah.
Public schools are doing exactly what they was designed to sort, to shift, to stratify people of color and working class people into the hierarchy, right? To separate, to make sure that the whiter you are, you rise to the top.
Lower job.
Right? It's poor folk down at the bottom, middle class folk in here, and then of course we got race in there. I mean, it's we just need to, it needs to definitely change. It's not working. They're not working. And I'm a teacher, right? That's my job. I love it. I'm working to inspire educators. But one of the things I'm doing, I'm telling you, the thing that I'm doing is I'm inspiring them to be social justice minded, to go out here and shake it up, shake it all up. Shake it all up. I'm teaching here in North Carolina. You want to be like Jesus? Jesus flipped over tables.
That's right. We have money changers now. Bullwhip on their ass. So here's my question to you, because you've kind of hinted around it by talking about what you do, which is, of course, you're teaching teachers, you're training teachers. One of the reasons we can't correct the public schools is because the universities, their system for producing public school educators is absolutely horrific. About 5 years ago, I was on the undergraduate studies committee in the history department. And, we deal with the undergraduate curriculum. So one of the things we were dealing with the social studies teaching certificate. So two of my white female colleagues came in with a proposal to rework the social studies certificate. 31 different classes. Not one class dealt with Black folk, American Indians, the people from South and Central America. I mean, it was like, have I been launched back to the goddamn 1940s?
That's what my thing is. Am I being punked? Is this a joke?
They had messed up because they put together a committee that had people who were either Black or brown or Asian, and then white people who taught on Asia and Africa. So we, of course, rejected it. I rewrote it, right? The white women cried. I ended up in a meeting with HR and a dean. But then at the end of the semester, the end of the year, actually, the white woman who chaired the committee, who came in with that white supremacist curriculum, she got an award for DEI education, Educator of the Year. It is amazing what these folks do.
There's some real foolishness abound out there.
So we got to deal with
real foolishness abound. I have to say, I'm happy to be where I teach at the Winston-Salem State University, the #1 HBCU in the nation. Y'all go ahead in the chat, talk about what you want, but but seriously, no, I was serious when I said that, but I do think I agree that we have to make sure that teachers, that those of us in teacher ed are not perpetuating the foolishness, right? That we are working to disrupt. And like I said, I'm doing it every day. I'm working to disrupt. I'm like, listen here, this is what's going on out there, and this is what you need to do. And like I said, when I have these conversations with my students about how to utilize how to use the world as text, how to utilize hip hop and music as text, how to unpack it, and how do you navigate this system and what needs to change in it. So those are empowering conversations that we're having. And my department is a social justice focused department. Right, our motto, the university motto, was "Enter to learn, depart to serve." And so,
is your motto being used across HBCU? How expansive is the model? Because I'm concerned about two things. One, I think the percentage of Black teachers in the public school system is down to 2%.
Is it that low? To all black teachers, Black men.
6% at one point, but I think I think maybe 15 years ago it was 6%, but I think it's now down to 2%. And black males, I don't even know if they
Black
count.
males is about 2%.
Black males are 2%. So
Mhm.
you think it's still more?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
A little bit. I mean, it's not 40%. It's not the makeup of the country. It doesn't look like the teaching
It's not 10%.
population. Yeah, the teaching population does not mirror the student population, not at all. But it's definitely not balanced. Well, like I said, it's definitely not balanced, but it's not quite that low. But when we think about what's going on in the world, education, and I was just having this conversation the other day, education has become less and less sexy. Teaching, right? There was a time when everybody wanted to grow up and be a teacher. And nowadays, because children are clear, they see how teachers are mistreated. They see how teachers are overworked and underpaid. They hear it. I have students who tell me, my mama told me not to be an education major, Dr. Tafari, but I really love kids. So I'm over here anyway, kind of almost defying my mama who told me to go over there to the nursing program because they're going to make more money, right? We hear it all the time. And so, and then we look at the state of our schools where we're having school shootings, that rip my heart out every single time. And there's conversations about arming teachers, and then this less and less help from the federal government with this school system. I mean, I almost, it is.
Yeah, they're blowing it up.
There's no reason people they're trying to make teaching as unsavory as possible so that less and less people will go through it. But I agree that teacher educators need to absolutely be teaching pre-service teachers how to go into schools and disrupt. We need to be doing that on them en masse. Be teaching, you're training teachers, you need to be teaching them the tools, giving them the tools so that they can go into these schools and disrupt. They can continue to help young people by expanding their minds, by teaching them to be critical thinkers so that they can go in and continue to change the world. Push back.
So let me turn to your work outside of the classroom, particularly the Kwanzaa collective that you co-founded in Greensboro. And I know there's an article of yours that I read, The Kanara Speaks, Kwanzaa as an expression of activism and resistance in the city of Greensboro. So I want you to unpack the ways in which this Kwanzaa celebration leads toward a transvaluation of Blackness. And so can you react specifically to, Maulana Karenga makes the argument that the crisis in Black life. Now, I don't agree, but it's an alternative perspective. He makes the argument that the crisis in Black life is one of, quote, views and values, unquote. And so the question is then, Kwanzaa is an opportunity to transform the ways in which one understands Blackness. So can you talk about the ways in which the 7-day celebration that you've been doing in Greensboro for a number of years is changing the way we see ourselves and see the world, and how it's impacting the overall movement for Black liberation?
Yeah. So that piece is in the Critical Black Studies Reader, right? And my sis Tanya Poole, who was actually in the chat a second ago, I don't know if she's still there, my co-author, brilliant historian, that sis. And so we wanted to pay homage to those people who came before us doing the work around Kwanzaa and bringing Kwanzaa to the city of Greensboro before the Greensboro Kwanzaa Collective started in 2010. And so part of what we love about Kwanzaa, and I was just at it, I visit schools, public schools this week when I'm out of school and they're still in school, and I talk about Kwanzaa. And I was at a middle school today in a 7th grade social studies class talking about Kwanzaa today. And one of the things that I feel is super important about it is it makes this value system, right?
Nguzo Saba.
Tangible, the Nguzo Saba, which is kind of a collection of principles, right? He's done this work, put these principles together, these 7 kind of overarching larger principles that we can find that are kind of almost universal among Black folk. Yes, my sis, she's back in the chat. And so I think that one of the things that Kwanzaa does is it forces us to sit in these 3 questions, right? The Kawaida principles. Who am I? Am I who I say I am? And am I all I ought to be? And I think that is where, for me, that's where I find the work happens during Kwanzaa. And not just during Kwanzaa, but when we situate ourselves within the Nguzo Saba, all of these principles, and make sure that we're not just coming on December 26th and playing Kwanzaa until January 1st. Yeah. Right? I'm a good Black person. I celebrated Kwanzaa this year. But these are principles we need to be living and talking about all year long because they are guiding principles. We should be thinking about Ujima, right? It's like one of my guiding principles. Ujima is, how am I sharing and working with other Black folk? How am I knowing I love myself enough, my Kuji Jakulia, right, that I'm able to sit comfortably in who I am and love myself enough to love you because you look just like me. Right? We the same.
Yeah, Ubuntu.
We're the same. And I think that that's part of, so these principles guide us. So it's not, I think it's the concept of views and values, but I think it helps us to better situate our own selves so that we can impact positively our communities, so that we can continue to impact and we become empowered, right? And impact and change the world every day. Like I said, when I think about little things like Ujima, and I love this, I keep talking about Ujima, but the concept is life-changing for me. And it guides so much of what I do. And I want that for everybody, right? So when we think about what these principles are and the act of celebrating Blackness is revolutionary.
So I guess here's the question, and I'm being a bit scientific in this sense that you've been doing the Kwanzaa celebrations for more than a decade.
Mm-hmm.
How do you measure the success in changing the ways in which Black folks in Greensboro see themselves? And how does a change in how we see ourselves and our relationship to U.S. capitalist, white supremacist, global racial capitalism, how do we see struggle? How do we see us building our own institutions? Can you see an impact from the consistent practice of this very important holiday that gives us important principles, Ujima and Ujamaa, right? Which translates socialism from Nyeri. Well, I don't know what it translates to. I think it's only cooperative economics for Maulana, but for Julius Nyeri, right? Who now Ujamaa, freedom and socialism, that collection of essays he did. How do you see it having transformative power? Material.
I see it as tangible ways. And so we have a Ujamaa marketplace the first Friday of December, the Greensboro Kwanzaa Collective. And it's just Black vendors, come out, support these folk. We had a vendor this year who said, I was going over and I'm talking to her. I love your work, your art, she has these beautiful pieces that she's making and she decided to sell them. And I said, I love your work. Tell me more about it. She said, you all inspired me. I came to Kwanzaa last year, and at your African marketplace, each day we have our African marketplace. She said, and I thought, and she said, and sitting and watching and listening, I said, I need to do this. That she thought about the fact she was inspired being at the Kwanzaa celebrations to start her own business. Like that's what I'm seeing. And I'm seeing, and we have a vendor. So that happened the first Friday. I met this sister who said we inspired her. And then there's a sister who's coming to the Kwanzaa celebration on the 28th and the 29th who is selling, she makes cakes. She makes delicious cakes. I have had them. Yes, I have. And she's like, I'm coming to sell my cakes. Like we're seeing people inspired into entrepreneurialism. They're seeing people who are coming and seeing their own worth through these conversations, through these interactions, through the networking and the fellowshipping that's happening during the celebrations, during, again, hearing the words about being inspired by the different speakers, the different performers. They're hearing this, they're seeing the vendors, they're seeing how people come out to support, they're seeing other Black vendors. Some of these people are like, I didn't even realize that this was a thing, that I could do this, that I could make a living doing this. And there are people doing that now as a result of coming to our Kwanzaa celebrations. And it's overwhelming sometimes, but it is, and it's amazing at the same time. We have young people that have grown up coming to our Kwanzaa celebrations who are going off to graduate school or who are in high school, who are doing really well. And they talk about the times that they have spent with the Kwanzaa Collective or coming to our events throughout the year, and especially participating in Kwanzaa and feeling a sense of empowerment and feeling pride in who they are, pride in their Blackness, loving locks, loving their noses, right? Their big noses or their dark skin. We're seeing those are the things that we're seeing throughout the year. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. So we're getting to that point where I need to go to the chat and pull out some questions for you. But before we do that, do you have any thoughts that about the contemporary state of Black folk that you want to talk about? Do you have any announcements? Anything that you want to further elaborate on before we go to the chat?
Yeah. I think the first thing I want to say is don't give up on young people. I see, and I said, we throw our hands up. I see more and more distance between elders and youth, and it's really easy to blame youth, but it's not logical to blame youth. How do you blame the child for the mistakes of the parent? Like, we don't want to take responsibility. And at the same time, we see young people who are so hyper distracted by social media in the world, and we need to go get them. We need to go get our babies, teach them how to navigate the world of the internet, bring them home, talk to them, love them. Don't tell them the internet is stupid, the pages, don't say that, because all that does is offend them and turn them off. But say, come here, baby, let's talk about who's your favorite rapper now. Who? Sexy Red. Why you like Sexy Red? Let's talk about it. Like, you know what I mean? Be willing to engage them in real conversations. Treat them like the humans that they are. And so that's my biggest thing. We want to save this world. We want to save Black people. We need to embrace, we need to go get our babies. Yeah. We need to get our babies, and we need to make sure we're loving on them and engaging them in meaningful conversation. We don't have to agree on everything, but we need to engage them and let them know that their feelings matter. And then Kwanzaa, right? Greensboro Kwanzaa Collective. We're in the city of Greensboro, North Carolina. If you are anywhere in North Carolina, come see us. December 26th through the 1st, every single day. On Saturday, December 28th, we have our Kwanzaa Family Fest, which is a day, it's like a conference for families, all centered around different Kwanzaa principles. There's a brilliant young scholar here in Greensboro who is a chess champion. He's like 9. And he's going to be leading a workshop. We have face painting, we have arts and crafts, we have a STEM workshop, we have African dance, African drum class, Kwanzaa basics, storytelling, story writing. And then we have a panel with elders. We have gathered like 6 elders in our community, all 75 and older. And I have gathered questions from young people 4 to 24 years of age. And they are going to sit in, I got chills just thinking about it. They're going to sit in conversation.
Can you film any of this?
Oh my God. I'm going to ask the elders for permission to film the panel. I mean, I got chills. I'm telling you, I can almost cry thinking about the beauty to have these young people, 4 to 24, sit in the same room with these elders, all 75 and older, and ask them questions. And these elders they are so excited to be part of this panel. They bring in their friends. It's wonderful. It's so awesome. And we have folk who are leaders in different spiritual sects, elected officials, one mama who's on the school board, a brother who's an amazing storyteller, Baba Fred Motley, my mama T. Diane Bellamy Small, Iya Oyatoki, Baba Ade Tutu, all kinds of just Mama Donna McCraney, really beautiful, beautiful elders who are in this community doing work in their various ways that they touch and they support and they empower young people. And they have given up their Saturday afternoon to come and sit and talk with young people. So I'm super excited about that. And I will definitely, I will ask for their consent that day, but if we can live stream that and record it, we surely will, because it's going to be amazing. So that's on the 28th of December. That happens kind of in the middle of our celebration. Well, we do that on the Saturday of the Kwanzaa celebration. So really excited. And we have some virtual stuff. So follow us on Facebook, GSO, like Greensboro, GSO Kwanzaa Collective. We're on Facebook, and our website is indigoscac.org.
And I'll type it into the chat. It's Indigo.
Indigos, like the color indigo, INDIGOSCAC.org. Indigos Cultural Arts Centers.org. That's our website. So our schedule is there. All our social media stuff is there. Indigos with an S. Indigos with an S.
Oh, it was an S, not an F?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Indigos.
With Indigos.
CAC.org. Indigos, like the word is apostrophe. Indigos CAC.org. CAC
Indigos.org.
No, CAC.org. Indigos, INDIGOS as in Sam. C as in cat, C as in cat. .org.
Okay.
Yes, there we go, Albert.
Got it.
IndigoCAC.org. Thank you.
Got it.
Yes, that is it. So that's our website. You want to learn more about us, the mamas, as we call ourselves, as we are called. The Greensboro Kwanzaa Collective is a programming partner of Indigo's Cultural Arts Centers. That's our nonprofit, our fiscal sponsor. And so that's a great part of the work that I do. And it's really important to me. And I bring it all together. So I'm here. I'm game for whatever questions there are, comments or thoughts.
Unfortunately, we only got 90 seconds left. And the question, there's more comments than questions, but one question that I do see is from Mickey O'Shea, and he wants you to talk about the recent YSI trial in Fulton County, Georgia.
I'm not familiar. The YSI trial. If I would need a little.
I'm not sure either. Can you type something in quick? I'm thinking you referring to the Uhuru 3 trial. Okay, all right. I'm being told by my producers it's not gonna make it.
It's not gonna make it. But so Indigo CAC, the Greensboro Kwanzaa Collective Facebook page, we're there. I'm also on Facebook, Dr. Dawn Hicks Tafari. my page. I'm also on Instagram at Love Eat Build. Love Eat Build. So I'm happy to continue to stay in dialogue with folk, answer questions, and continue. Yeah. And I think I saw somebody ask about my work. So yeah, so check me out. I'm there, like I said, Dr. Dawn Hicks Tafari on Facebook and at Love Eat Build on Instagram. That's where I am. And then of course, Greensboro Kwanzaa Collective is another way to get in contact with me.
I'm going to tap into Greensboro Kwanzaa Collective right quick before we have to send it. I know.
He hollering at you. We gotta go.
Yeah, he gotta go.
Oh,
right.
Young Thug.
They'll be able to find their way to it. Don.
Yes, friends. Y'all have been awesome. This was wonderful.
Gotta have you back. My transcript.
Yes,
definitely, we got to do this again. Enjoy. Really appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you, Baba. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I'm going to remove yourself and I'm going to remove my